Well, it is so wonderful to have you back. I'm excited for this conversation and also just to learn about the nervous system because to be honest with you, like we hear these things thrown around, especially more and more these days, which is wonderful, but I don't even fully understand what that means. I don't fully understand how to care for my nervous system. And your name, of course, popped up in my head and was like, this is a conversation I got to have with Jenn. Um, and I'm just so excited to really put myself in the learner's seat for this conversation. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Jen's having matcha, I'm having cacao. So if we're chatty Cathy's and I interrupt a whole lot, just send love. Um,
Awesome.
but I can't wait to learn about the nervous system. We've got so much ahead of us this year. And I just feel like it's this information is very important for us to learn more about, and then also how to care for ourselves. The body is such a beautiful tool for wisdom. I love working with my body and just that journey of continuing to listen to it better. So I'm really looking forward to today. I know that the listeners are going to really be able to utilize this information. Um, so let's kind of start with the basics.
Mm.
Let's start off with like, why is it important to pay attention to the nervous system?
Mm.
And, what is the nervous system?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, we came here on this planet to be in these body vessels, and most of us don't really know how they work or how they run. It's kind of like a car, right? So if you have a car, you want to know how to make it go faster and how to make it slow down, right? Because you want to get places, you want to do things, you want to create an experience for yourself. And that requires you to know how the vehicle works. But our bodies are these magnificent vehicles that can create all kinds of things and do all kinds of things. And most of us don't really understand how they work and how to um, consciously work with your body to create a certain outcome. So most of us think that our body's just doing its own thing and that we're a victim to it. And I felt like that for many, many years. Hence why I kind of walked down this path to be like, wait a second, I need to better understand this because my body's doing its own thing and I don't really like this experience. So how do I work with it? So I like to think of the nervous system as like the primary electrical system of your body. So everything your body does, every organ system, every movement that we make, our temperature going up and down, every control and system of the body is regulated by our nervous system. So our nervous system is like, the gas pedal of the car, the engine of the car. It goes up and it goes down. And that tells our body to, you know, do something or to rest and repair. And so it's actually really simple when we look at it that way. And it's doing its own thing in the background every moment of every day. Like we've just drank our cacao and matcha, so our nervous system is like starting to get a little excited. The caffeine's going in, things are picking up. It's like, we're getting activated and we feel energized when that happens. And so understanding how your nervous system works really helps you to consciously create your experience of life through your body, because we start to realize that there are many moments in our day, week, year where we're feeling awful. We're either overwhelmed, full of anxiety, fear, exhausted, burnt out, depressed. We're feeling these things, and oftentimes those things are, yes, are they byproducts of our external environment and circumstance? Absolutely. But also it's coming from an internally dysregulated nervous system. So if our nervous system is, say, um, you know, stuck in freeze mode for too long, we're not going to feel like ourselves. We're going to feel disconnected from reality. We're going to feel disconnected from our bodies, probably from the people around us. We might feel numb. And there are so many things that we can do, little things, simple things, once you start to understand how it all works, to shift and change and impact and understand what's going on with your nervous system. And we'll talk about lots of those today.
Yeah. I love that metaphor of a car. That really definitely, just kind of brings it down to earth. As someone who really wanted to do well in biology class or anything, but just couldn't grasp everything that was going on, that made it very easy. Um, I'm curious to talk more about, well, I guess let me put that thought on hold. I'd love to hear your thoughts then on the importance of listening to the body and really paying attention to what it is that it's showing you. Like, how truthful do you think those alerts are, you know, that come up for
Mm.
us?
Yeah. Well, I always say that the body doesn't lie, as in the body will give you an indicator of what is alive in this moment. So, whatever's alive and happening right now, your body will let you know about it. So, if you eat something and it doesn't like it, it's going to let you know. If you're with someone and there isn't a resonance, it's going to let you know. The interesting thing about that is that response that you have can sometimes be a byproduct of your history. So to say that your body in each moment is telling you the absolute truth is not always the case, right? So if you have, you've had an experience with a dog before that scared you, and then you're walking down the street and your body goes, because you see a dog, there's an element of truth in that moment that, yes, your body is alerting you to, hey, like, not safe. And also, there's an element of it's having a response based on your past history that it remembers because it's so smart. And that is also happening in the same moment. So we have to work with our body and our mind together. So we firstly listen to the body's cues of what's there, and then we have to use our conscious discernment to decide what action we need to then take. So they work together. But most of us don't do the listening part. Our body has a whole experience, and we just follow our mind's ideas of what we should do or how we're supposed to be, or our identity or personality. So for instance, you go out to a gathering and you're talking to someone, and like, they're throwing some really harsh opinions out that are just making, you're just feeling, maybe really uncomfortable. But your mind is like, well, no, I have to be nice to this person. I've got to please them. They might be a potential customer of mine or whatever. So you just sit there and you don't listen to your body and you follow your programmed way of being. But your body had an experience where it wasn't listened to. And over time, when we do that over and over and over, the body shuts down. The body starts saying, like, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to make you listen. we're going to make you throw up when you're in social situations. We're going to make you have panic attacks. We're going to put you in bed for 2 weeks.
Yeah, get
And
your
so
attention.
get your attention. Yeah. Yeah. Because um, our body requires our conscious awareness, our I like to call it like felt presence. Like we have to be present with ourselves and with our body for it to actually like rest and relax and repair and do all the things that it wants to do.
Yeah. One of the places where I feel like, I mean, that come to mind immediately, and I feel like everyone can identify is in relationship. It's like in relationship with someone else. I know with my partner, especially the first couple of years, um, I would feel, like scared
Mm.
for no reason. Like he would say something to me like, hey, let's talk about blah, blah, blah later. And for whatever reason, I would get this experience like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I've done something wrong. And he has never given me any reason to feel that way. He has never made me feel unsafe. He has never done any of those things to bring about that triggering inside of me. And it took me some time to realize, like, oh, this is from my childhood. This is from XYZ that
Mm.
happened. And I think that everyone can identify with that. Like we've all been there where we realize we're responding to our partner in a way that, again, it's a body response because my body would freak out and tense up and I, can barely breathe and it's having an
Mm-hmm.
experience, but it doesn't really need to be in that moment. And it wasn't until I
Mm-hmm.
connect that mind, which I love that you pointed that out. I think that's so important, that it was like, it's okay, Anna. He has never done any of these things. He is, like you are safe with him. It's okay, like talking to my body, that it actually got me to a place where I didn't have those responses every time he'd want to have a conversation or he'd give me that certain tone of voice or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way I see those moments now is that each of those moments, when you're having that moment with your partner and something is arising in your system, right? All of a sudden you've got energy that's bubbling up. And sometimes we refer to this as like being triggered, or there's a trigger. And what's really happening in that moment is that energy that was not able to be discharged from your nervous system at a previous moment in time. So we'll say you had an interaction maybe with your father at some point, and you didn't get to fully move through your process. It's almost like, if we go back to the car analogy, this is how I look at it. It's like if you rev the gas, you've got to slowly let the gas pedal come back to normal, to neutral. So when we have moments of like something happened, trauma, this is how trauma works in the nervous system, something big happens. We have a big surge of energy in our system. Our nervous system goes off, and most of us never have what we need to actually let the body slowly discharge that energy so that we could come to a place of neutrality where it wouldn't stay stuck in our body and it wouldn't become a trauma. So, for instance, if with your dad, say he yelled at you, your nervous system goes, you have this huge surge of energy. If someone was there with you and said, oh, Anna, I'm here, it's okay. Oh my gosh, you must be so scared. And your little arms would shake and your body would say, I'm so scared. And all of the energy would process through your system, and you'd have someone there, and then you'd come back to a place of calm, of parasympathetic, of relief and release. So what
wouldn't it?
happens, your partner says, Anna, whatever. And all that energy that was there in your body from that time with your dad comes rising up like a tidal wave in your body. And so it's actually this beautiful opportunity and moment for us to learn, how do we let that energy discharge from our system? How do we complete the process that never got processed? And to do that, you don't actually have to understand where did it come from, what happened. You don't have to understand all the details. If you can be with yourself in that moment and say, I have enough conscious awareness to know that what's happening in my body right now, you know, it's a trauma coming up because this is not to discount trauma, but it's slightly irrational. Like the level of response that you're having in your body for the moment is usually really big in comparison to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So if you can have the enough awareness to recognize, I'm being triggered here. What's arising is arising to pass through my body. It wants to move through, it wants to complete. This is an opportunity for me to let this complete itself. And you can use your breath and your presence to be with it, to be like, what's here? Oh my gosh, I'm just so scared. I'm so scared. I have so much fear in my body. Then you can do that process that that little girl needed to do. And you can go back to your partner and say, I love you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been very helpful for me to also just voice, what I'm feeling. And
Mm.
that's just kind of, I'm a split definition in human design. So it's how I process energy. And that really helps me to just call it out, like, hey, I'm feeling scared, feeling jealous, I'm feeling whatever. And then that just kind of helps to release. And my partner now knows, like, hey, it's okay. So I
Yeah.
kind of get to do that. So you talked a minute ago um, about freezing. And there's a couple
Mm-hmm.
of these, like the freezing, the fawning. I'd love for you to kind of go over those with us, and just kind of introduce those terms, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, sure. We have different nervous system responses. So keep in mind, like, we're animals, right? So our bodies are, our nervous system is partially working to keep us alive. So we have different responses to, ways that the nervous system goes off, ways that energy moves through our body, or electrical signals move through our body. And so when something happens or we experience a stimulus of some kind, we often go into different responses. And so the different responses are fight. So we have the impulse to bring energy through our body and out towards something. Flight, which is like, get the hell out of the situation, run. Freeze, which is like basically shut down, pretend I'm dead. And fawning, which animals don't really do fawning so much. Maybe they do. Maybe they like wag their tail. But humans do fawning, which is like, it's something we often learn in childhood, which is like, how do I adapt to this situation to mold myself into it so I'm less of a threat? So we often see fawning as like people pleasing behavior, or appeasing behavior,
Mm.
going with people's lead and not setting boundaries. So each of us will have our habitual pattern of choice, usually, when something signals to our nervous system that there's a threat. And depending on our experiences growing up, depending on the nervous system responses we saw our parents having, we will often do one or two of the patterns over and over again. So if you have, say, a tendency towards having a fight pattern, your instinct might be to yell or to break something or to throw something. You're going to physically move into motion. You're going to do something. You're going to take immediate action towards the threat. So, and none of these are bad or wrong, for the record. These are all ways that our systems are programmed to keep us alive.
Yeah.
So it's just good to know. It's good to know what's your habitual pattern and how do you work with it and how do you identify when you're doing it and how do you help yourself come out of it. Because what happens often is we experience a threat and then we stay in that place, right? So all of a sudden, you're driving to work and you're on the road and you have road rage, which is classic fight response. And then your nervous system has gone into this state of fight. And then you go to the office and all day long, you're still stuck in that state of fight. So how do we get better at recognizing like, oh yeah, this is what I do. I'm stuck in this fight place and now I'm picking on this person and picking on this person. How do I shift out of it so I come out of the survival state and into like just being state again? And oftentimes that requires, some level of conscious awareness or presence to understand what's going on.
Yeah. All I can think about as you're talking is just like how important it is for us to try and be aware of these behaviors. And I know, like, just thinking about you covering the four and thinking about my own behavior, I would say, like, the fight and the freeze are probably my two. And that, like, fight was from my father and freeze was from my mother. And those are really the two I think that I kind of like bounce back and from. Do you see a lot with your clients that they really pick up those from their parents? I would imagine that's a major factor.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's the thing about our nervous system is that because we're social beings, our bodies, our electrical system is so interwoven and connected with other humans. So when you're a baby, and this goes for dogs too. Like you'll see, or not just dogs, animals. You can tell that your animal is responding to your nervous system.
Oh
Like our
yeah.
nervous systems are always dancing together, right? So how often do you you come home and you're all pent up and you're all wired up and then your dog is doing the same damn thing or your kids are doing the same thing? Or you come home and maybe you're really sad and you're kind of in that place and the dog just comes over and meets you right in that place. So we're always actually syncing our systems up. So when you're a child and you're a baby and your nervous system is learning its own habitual waves and patterns, it is just learning from syncing up with your parents.
Yeah, that
So
makes complete sense.
if their pattern is constant flight response, then your nervous system learns a pattern of constant flight response or freeze or whatever it is.
So what are some of the ways that we can start being more aware, when we're in these places?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go back and maybe talk about the other ones for a second, and
Sure.
then we can identify a bit of them because I think we kind of identified, how to know if you're in a fight response. Usually, if you're in a fight response, you want to vocalize, you want to move and take action of some kind. Maybe you slam your hands on the steering wheel or something like that. You feel hot. There's a sense of heat. And often you want to yell or make sound.
I get very defensive.
Defensive. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, a flight response is that you usually want to leave the situation. So you just got to go. You got to cut the conversation off. You got to physically distance yourself. If you don't physically distance yourself, you might even just check out. So that happens with a lot of people if their tendency is to, is to flee.
Like
Um,
disassociating.
Yeah, and that can like kind of edge into freeze response, but yes, like you can just like you're just energetically gone from the conversation or from the experience. Your body might still be there, but you are not there. Um, so that can happen. So what this looks like is just this feeling of oftentimes there's a lot of energy in your legs
Mm,
when you experience a flight response because your body's like preparing to run,
yeah.
literally. So lots of energy in your lower half. A fight response would be more in your upper half. And your feet might, like, you see people that like tap their feet, tap, 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 tap. Yep, guess what? They're trying to get out of the situation.
Okay, so I'm clearly flight, not freeze.
um, so that can happen. And or even say you're a person who does flight, you might get into fights with your partner, and while you're in the fight you're thinking about totally other things, like your mind goes off to fantasy or like other places. It's like you're just anything to leave, physically, emotionally, mentally, and otherwise. So so that's what happens if you experience a flight response. A freeze response is where your instinct is to basically kind of like pretend that you're dead in a way. So everything shuts down. You'll get cold,
Mm.
quiet, still. Um, there's very little movement. There's often like the brain function starts to dissipate a bit. So you might feel you're not mentally sharp, put it that way. In a fight response, you're mentally sharp. In a freeze response, you're often foggy or confused mentally. Your whole system is just like slowing down and shutting down. So oftentimes this might look like confusion and numbness. Your body feels like it's paralyzed a little bit. Keeping in mind, like I said, that these can happen in an acute situation, but they can also happen chronically. Especially, if you look at the past few years when we've just gone through so much like repeating stressors, like just constant stress, we can slip into these states in a less, just in like a more chronic way. So we're just doing like this subtle fight response every day, or this subtle flight response, or this subtle freeze. And I know for myself, I definitely, especially last year over the winter, I just froze up.
Hmm.
I couldn't move. I couldn't feel anything. I didn't feel like myself. I felt really like kind of hopeless and just no life energy. And it wasn't until I actually started to physically do exercise again and start to move my body again and bring breath and energy back in again that I started to come out of it and feel more alive. And I think that's happening for a lot of people after this big, long period of time.
Yeah, we're all processing so much right now and
Yeah.
releasing so much.
Yes. Yeah. And so the last one would be fawning. And um, oftentimes, what people notice if they're fawning is that all of their attention goes off of themselves, and attention and awareness goes to the other person that they're with or the situation that they're with. So all of a sudden you'll become just like very focused on what is happening with the other person and energetically reading them, and what do you do and how do you adapt and what is the thing to say.
Hmm.
So it's like you get wherein if you're in a flight or a fight, you're like in a different state of focus. In this case, you're focusing on the other person with the intention of adapting and appeasing them,
Hmm.
and trying to conform to what it is that you think they will want you to do to not be a threat.
Hmm. So it's not like, because I guess my fawning for me has always kind of been a bit of a confusing one. So it's not like, it's kind of the opposite of manipulation. Is that right? Where it's like, instead of you like really paying attention to the other person so that you can control the situation, you're paying so much attention to the other person that like they have more control over you. Is that correct?
In a way, yeah. Yeah. You really are just trying to um
Survive, it sounds like.
survive. Yeah. It's a really, we learn this as kids, and this is maybe an easier way to look at it. When we're children and, say we're in a house where people are yelling or aggressive or whatever, it's like, what do I have to do to make this better?
Mm.
So we learn like, oh, I can just, if I just take care of dad, if I just am really quiet,
Make a
if
joke.
I'm just, if I'm funny, then we won't be in trouble. Then it's like a
Mm.
way of managing. So there can be like a slight element, if it's a happening over a long period of time, there can be elements of like manipulation in there, but it's from the standpoint of survival, like trying to survive. So we have
Yeah.
to have a lot of compassion for that experience. It's something that we learn, and I think it's like, you know, it's a beautiful adaptation that we learned, that we get to just understand if we're playing it out over and over and over, how much are we playing this out, and then how do we shift out of it. And a part of the way that you shift out of fawning is to start to bring more awareness to your own body, your own experience, to not completely zone into the other person, but to stay with yourself through it.
Yeah, it's like Jim Carrey and Robin Williams sort of like coming to mind, like these comedians who talk about as children they grew up with like, I feel like very depressed, alcoholic parents, and maybe I'm getting their stories confused, but like nonetheless, parents who really like they wanted to make things better for them. So they were constantly like making jokes and trying to make them laugh. And is that kind of what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We were looking for harmony and safety
Yeah.
always. The place where the nervous system loves to be is a beautiful flowing state of like activation, energized, energy, stress, calm, relax, rest, restore. Like that's where we want to be. And that's when we register in our system that we're safe, when we have that harmonious flow in our nervous system. And so these are the different things that we do to try and reestablish that in some way. If I just make dad laugh, maybe we'll get back to a place where things will feel more safe.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were giving the example a bit ago about processing the energy. And if a parent was like, oh, Anna, blah, 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 I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, it would be a different world if we'd grown up, in homes like this where we had those opportunities. And then also thinking like, wow, parents have just the most intense job ever because there's endless opportunities for that, right? And
Mm.
that really requires so much on the parents' end as well to actually be able to consistently give that, with so much going on. That's why I've always said, like, I think that's the hardest job on the planet.
Mm. Right.
um, so shifting into, if you feel like this is a good place, like in regards to what tools or what ways can we kind of start being more aware, and then I'd love to actually step into like how we can work towards finding these more harmonious places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just want to go back to what you said there for one minute
Yeah.
because I think it's important to say that as we continue on this journey on this planet at this time, as things continue to, externally in some way intensify, it feels like there's just a lot happening, right? We are kind of at this place where we don't have a choice anymore. If we want to keep surviving and being here and doing this life thing, we have to learn how to regulate our nervous systems.
Yeah.
And we have to teach our kids.
Yeah.
And we do that firstly by, like you said, it's a lot on the parent. It is. And the best way to teach your kid how to have a regulated nervous system is to have a regulated nervous system.
Yeah.
Or to be able to say to your kid like, hey, this is what happened when I got dysregulated. So I just think that it's we're at this place where we have to learn this because if we're all out there in cars and we don't know how to drive them and we don't know how they work, it's just going to make a big giant mess on all the highways.
Yeah.
And we've got enough mess out there already. So this is very, very important for these times. We have to know
Completely
how to
agree.
work with ourselves, especially if we're going to ideally, we're not just in stress for the next X amount of years. Ideally, we can learn how to regulate ourselves to a place where we have enough resource to be able to be creative and take inspired action from a place of safety and harmony within ourselves so that we could create a new possibility here. Because if we're all stressed and dysregulated, we can't really create anything new because at that point we're just creating more of the past that we've already lived out. If you just keep going into the same response with your partner and fighting back and being defensive over and over and over again, you're creating more of the same thing. And we're in a time where we need to create new things. So we have to learn how to be resourced enough to do that. So it's a big task. It's a really big task that we're being asked to understand ourselves at this level and to learn how to, in a way, parent ourselves.
Couldn't
In
agree more. I mean, that's why I wanted, to have this conversation with you. And I mean, on this, on Soul Driven, the Akashic Records have been talking about for over a year the importance of building a solid foundation. And these tools and understanding these things are that solid foundation. Because, yeah, as the world is falling apart around us, we've got to be able to learn how to not just survive, but thrive in the meantime. We're not meant to fall apart with everything else. That's a decision. But with tools like this, and again, why I wanted to have this conversation is because we can do this for ourselves. This is not like out of control work. You don't even really need money to do this. You don't need like all the shiny things. This is awareness, taking small steps, having conversations, listening to your body, like doing different things. So yes, I full and wholeheartedly agree with everything that you're saying. And I'm so glad that you shared it and shared it in that way too, because I feel like you came at it from a different perspective and so valuable. So thank you.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it does feel really, really, really important. And, the thing I think that is so amazing is that, and we'll talk more about this. I know you had a few other questions, but um, the breath is this incredible, magical, built in tool that we have to regulate our nervous system. Like, it's amazing. We have this built in mechanism in our bodies that if we slow it down and dial it down and bring our awareness to it, we can shift in a matter of minutes our nervous system from a state of fight or flight into back into safety and harmony. Or shift from a state of freezing and fawning and or stuckness into aliveness and activation through breathing more vigorously. So it's kind of hilarious that we have this built-in tool that is like the perfect tool for our system, and we don't really know how to use it, or we underestimate it and we're like, oh, that can't do it. I need a prescription, or I must need to do X amount of therapy to figure this all out. Or you could start breathing every morning for like 20 minutes and build a relationship with your breath so that throughout the day, if you build a relationship with your breath will start to automatically regulate your system. The second I start getting stressed now, my breath starts shifting. It automatically starts shifting and starts bringing me back down. Like, oh, isn't that great? Because I've taken the time to build a practice with it. We have a
Yeah.
relationship. So I just think that that's really cool, and brings a lot of hope to me, because if the thing we really need to learn at this time is to regulate our nervous systems, and we need an immediate, accessible, easy to learn, easy to use, works every time, dependable tool, it's already here.
Yeah. God
It's
made
right
this body perfect, and it built like the tools are here. It's just like the planet, like the solutions are already here. We don't need to look outside of ourselves for these solutions. So let's dive into ways to like, like you've talked about the breath a little bit.
here.
I'd love for you maybe to talk about a couple of ways to help regulate the system and then like really kind of dive into breath a little bit, and maybe if you can show us, just a few little breath work techniques, that would be amazing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, great. When it comes to regulating the nervous system, I think people often assume that that means always finding calm.
Mm.
And I want to debunk that a bit, because really our nervous system is much like our heart rate. It's something that goes up and down, up and down, up and down all day long. So when you think about it, when you wake up in the morning and you're in a sleepy state, your nervous system goes into activation, and then maybe you sit down on the couch for a little bit and it deactivates. It decompresses, it slows down, it downregulates. And then you go and get in the car and it activates, and then you sit in the car and it downregulates. So when we talk about regulating the nervous system, we're not just talking about finding peace and calm and relaxation.
Mm.
Regulating actually means finding the harmonious wave.
I love that.
What we don't want to do is we don't want to get stuck in either activation, fight or flight, stress, always on, always churning, always busy, go, 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 can't stop. You get in bed at night and your head is going, and you're thinking about all the things and you can't shut down, you can't turn off, and you're scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. We don't want to get stuck there. Our bodies will not do well being stuck in either nervous system state. So either they're in fight or flight or in a freeze state where you have no energy, you're lethargic, you're really tired, you might be depressed, you feel numb, nothing's happening, you can't get out of bed in the morning, you can't get yourself to exercise, there's just nothing's happening. The body needs flow for health and vitality. If things aren't moving and flowing, if they get stuck, the body starts to shut down. So when we're talking about regulating the nervous system, what we're really meaning is getting better at either bringing more activation and energy into the system to wake it up, or dialing the energy down to calm things down. And how do we identify which we need and when? So I think that's important. We talk a lot about like down regulating because we're in a society where a lot of the time we're just in fight or flight because of our capitalistic model of things where we're always going and doing and alpha and all of that. But it's just as important to be able to activate your system and get energy moving and flowing so you can still take action too.
Oh, yeah. I think that's massive right now. Kind of like we were talking about, there's so much processing happening that, I mean, I know for myself, I have been more like stuck over the past couple of years than I've been my entire life. Like, that's not been the norm for me. If anything, I was kind of on the other extreme. But I think just the weight of the change, the weight of just everything that's been happening. So I think that I love that I love that you shared, AKA debunked that, because yeah, that helps me to really wrap my head around what it actually is.
Sure. And, there's been a way in which over the past little while, like with the isolation, and we're not active in the way that we were at one time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so the tendency for people to go into even just like a low grade freeze response now is very common. And
Yeah.
I see it a lot with um, a lot of my clients, because just the simple stress of the emotional weight of everything is enough to send your body into a freeze, because it's just a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot to feel. All of
Yeah.
the uncertainty and everything is a lot to feel. And even just that alone can put your system into a like, I don't know how to move. I can't move. Yeah.
Yeah. I really had to shift my whole like morning routine. I used to get up in the morning and like really spend time journaling and, in devotion and prayer, doing my things, and then and then exercise and get into my day. And now it's like, I have to get up first thing and exercise. I got to get moving first. Otherwise, I end up hanging out way too long. It's just different energy right now for sure. And I'm glad you bring that up. I mean, I talk a lot about the importance of like moving the body, but I think that connecting those two, especially in my mind, is really important, or like it's a very helpful to be like, oh, okay. So it's not like I'm lazy or I'm, you know what I mean, like beating
Yes.
myself up.
Yes.
It's not about that. It's like, oh, my nervous system is so overwhelmed right now. And so that's okay. This is what's happening. It's not, instead of taking it personal, you know?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. That's such a valuable piece here because I think that's a lot of how the freeze response can show up is like just this like procrastination and not being able to get things done and take action and so when I work with people, I always, instead of trying to get them to do these things, it's like, no, let's try and get your nervous system activated and your energy in motion first. So, exactly like you said, if you're a person who's waking up in the morning and you feel sluggish and tired and drained and like you just, you have a hard time like getting that engine going, this is your cue to activate your nervous system. That's your medicine in the morning. If you're a person who has a tendency towards freeze or is going through a, temporary freeze state, for you to wake up and meditate is going to be garbage.
Yeah.
To go and sit, you're just going to sit there and you're going to sit in your frozen state. You're not going to get any insight and it's not helpful. So it's good to look at it this way because I think we do this thing where we're like, oh, meditating's good for everybody. And when we're looking at these practices, these self-healing, self-help practices through the lens of the nervous system, what we're actually saying is, okay, where am I at and what's the medicine for me right now?
Mm.
So if you wake up and you're sluggish and you feel kind of slow and frozen, your medicine is to activate your nervous system, which can look differently. I would say the best things to do would be to move your body, preferably quickly. So squats and move your breath, preferably quickly through your mouth. Those two things will very easily and in a very short amount of time activate your nervous system. If you take someone who's in a freeze response, who's been like stuck in a depression for a while, and you have them wake up first thing in the morning and do like 10 to 20 minutes of exercise for 2 weeks,
Life
game
changing.
changer,
Yeah.
game changer. That's not to say you're not going to have resistance to doing it. When you're in that frozen state, you often don't want to do it. So it takes some conscious willpower to say, this is the medicine. This medicine, this tastes awful, but I gotta drink it. And quite quickly, you'll start to, I like to look at it as thawing. You'll start to thaw out and you won't be so
Mm.
frozen. So, movement and fast breath. So, for me, if I wake up and I'm in that state, I will start breathing through my mouth. I like to breathe like I'm sucking through a straw. I'll be like, and even if you do that 10 times, you're going to start to feel energy building up in your system. So, what you do for movement doesn't really, really matter. But I would say that if you feel really stuck, bigger, fuller, more active movements will be better than, say, a yoga or something like that. Yeah.
I completely agree. I mean, yeah, I completely agree. Getting
Yeah.
outside too, I feel like is huge, you know?
Getting outside, yeah, getting the air, like putting yourself in motion. If you're frozen, all of a sudden, if you're moving, you're like waking up your other responses in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been loving like, over the winter, I was really like last fall, was like chucking myself outside in the cold. It was like, it's good. It's cold for a minute, but like, whoo, makes me feel alive, makes me feel,
Yes.
coming back to self.
Yes.
But
Nice.
I always be like, okay, what they say in yoga. It's like get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's like, all right, I'm good. I'm good. Purposefully
Mm-hmm.
not wearing my gloves or something like that, just to, you know, step into that.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. It's really good. So yeah, and you can use that at any time, So sometimes in the middle of the afternoon, I start to have this like, oh, like start feeling really stuck. I throw on a song and I just dance and jump up and down until I'm like have mobilized some energy, and then I go back to what I'm trying to do
Mm,
from a higher energy state, which is just much more, it's just easier. It's easier than trying to move from frozen and get yourself to move from frozen.
mm.
So then the other thing to recognize would be, when are you in a activated place, and what you really need to do is to help yourself down regulate. And so if you're in a really activated place, usually instead of feeling like sluggish and heavy and numb and all of that, you're probably in a place where you feel a lot of sensation. Things are buzzing and busy and stirring. You might feel kind of anxious, kind of sweaty. Um, like just usually your mind is going very quickly. You might feel ungrounded, unsettled. And in that case, the medicine is going to be to find a sense of slowness. So, in the first one, in the frozen place, we want to bring the energy up. And in this place, we want to bring the energy down. Both of these things require a transition. We don't wake up out of bed in the morning, go straight to activated. No, there's like a slow transition to help yourself. We don't go from fight or flight into calm and relaxed immediately. And I think that this is something that we have to get better at, giving ourselves enough space to actually do the unwinding and to come down into a state of harmony. So, um, if you want to help your body downregulate, it's helpful to get close to the ground. So, my favorite thing to do is if I've had a really, crazy day or busy day, I will lay on the floor. I'll give myself like 10 minutes. I'm doing a 10-minute transition from busy day into restful evening. And you want to take slow breaths through your nose. So, through your mouth is activating your nervous system. So, if you're going for a run, through your nose is going to slow your nervous system down. So, even little things, even if I just slow my voice, all of your nervous systems will start to slow down.
I love legs up the wall for this one.
Legs up the walls, awesome.
It's like my jam. I'm like, let me do
Yeah,
it. It feels
yeah,
so good.
yes. Like anything that is just getting you into the opposite state of kind of like a fight or a flight, where you're moving and you're on the go. If you can put your body into an opposite position, even child's pose, something like that, and then breathing long and slow through your nose. In a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, things will really start to settle. But you have to give it time, and you have to know that going from a really fast pace into a slower pace will feel very uncomfortable at first. That's why most of us don't make the transition.
Mm.
At the end of the day, we just kind of stay in this pseudo fight or flight where we're still watching Netflix shows where there's like guns and violence and scrolling on our phone at the same time and talking to our partner about all this drama. Like we're not really actually getting into that restful, peaceful state because it's uncomfortable to take that time and to actually do the unwinding that needs to happen so that you can land.
Yeah, it's a real act of self-care.
It's a real act of self care, yes. However, when you have done that, it realistically takes 10 minutes. We're talking 10 minutes. This is why people love having wine and cannabis, for the record, because wine and cannabis help you shift states. It helps
Fast.
your nervous system shift fast from usually from a fight or flight active stress, more stressful state into a calm, more harmonious state of being.
Mm.
But a lot of that feeling we're looking for, the can come from just simply laying on the floor and breathing, or just sitting in quiet for a couple of minutes, even in your car when you get home.
Oh gosh, that's like the best. I mean, like pre-pandemic when I'd like be running around and have my busy day and be at the co-working and like here and there and then like driving up. I mean, like sitting just in front of the house in my car just for like just at least 5 minutes, like no sound, no music, no phone, no like, oh, I always enjoyed that before I go inside, and then it's like, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if we can get better at practicing noticing the moments where, see, most of us don't know when we're in a heightened state because we're just so used to being there all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And that's why I love taking people through breathwork sessions, because at the end of a breathwork session, you lay there and you're like, wow, this is what it feels like to be relaxed. I think I forgot. I forgot. So you start to have a template again. So when you're walking through the world, you can be like, whoa, I'm like, I'm on another level. I'm way too far outside of my own zone of tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to me. Like with my mentorship clients, we always start the session with just a little bit of breathing. And I mean, like, I'm talking like usually 5 breaths at most. And I'm just like, half the time, like, I don't want to come back. And that's just like 5 slow breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, just like breathing into a count of 5 and exhaling. I mean, it's not anything huge, but like when I first got my Apple Watch years ago, I don't wear it anymore, but that thing used to ping me all the time, like, breathe, woman, breathe, because we're constantly like, not breathing normally throughout the day. We don't even realize it, that small practice of breathing. It's so simple and yet so profound at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because our breathing is, happens automatically until we bring conscious awareness to it. We, just happens in the background, and we do our habitual ways of breathing, which for most people is like very shallow, light breath, kind of barely breathing all day long. But the great thing about the respiratory system is quite easily trained. Like we can train it to breathe deeper. We can train it to breathe fuller, to breathe, all the way into our belly, back sides, and chest. I cured my asthma through just retraining my respiratory system. So there's lots of potential there once we bring some conscious awareness to it.
So, Jen, kind of wrapping up here. First, I'd love to just if there's anything else that you'd kind of like to share, and then we'll dive into how people can work with you and learn more about the work that you do. But is there anything else, about this that you want to share about the nervous system or
Yeah, I think my encouragement is for folks to get curious about their own nervous system and the way that their body responds to things and reacts to things. Because like I said, if we can learn how to regulate our own system, aka get ourselves out of stuckness and back into activation and aliveness, and also bring ourselves down into a calm, peaceful state when things get heightened. If we can learn to do that for ourselves and spot for ourselves when we need the certain medicine, like I said, we can do that for others, the people around us. We can do it for our kids. We can do it with our dogs. They say that whoever has the most regulated nervous system is actually like the leader in a
Hmm,
space or in a relationship.
hmm.
So if I come into this space with you and I'm able to regulate my nervous system, that means that your nervous system has the choice and the chance to sync up with mine. That's impactful.
That's huge.
That's incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
Most of my clients, when they come into their sessions with me, are very dysregulated.
Yeah.
And I sit with them and I sit and I sit. And always, like 5, 10 minutes in, their whole system just goes, like, okay, they landed. Imagine if we could do that with our kids and our siblings and our friends, like to be with them in whatever they're experiencing, in their fear, in their uncertainty, in their overwhelm, in their grief, and give them the gift of the feeling of safety and harmony and peace and everything's gonna be okay. What's better? That's what we're all looking for all the time. We're all just looking for that feeling of I'm okay and it's gonna be okay. And that feeling is the feeling of having a regulated nervous system. So I think I'll leave it at that.
I love it. So please share with us where folks can find you. And then I know you've got a couple of things going on right now. So how can people also work with you?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is JL Mansell, Mansell. And I also have a website, jennmansell.com. So you can find me there. And I work with people in lots of different ways, but I run groups. So this spring we're doing a group, which basically, in alignment with our conversation today, is helping people get out of that freeze state and into a healthy place of inspired motion and action forward, which is in alignment with this time of year because most of us are in a way coming out of hibernation. So it's clearing stuckness and stagnancy and moving into a place of inspired action. So that'll be starting in a couple weeks. And I also work with people one-on-one, and I do lots of different group things for people's communities and corporates and stuff like that. But I work with people one-on-one to really help them understand themselves better and understand their relationship with their body better, so they can, I kind of look at it like step into the adult or conscious creator role in their own life of saying, I'm going to take responsibility for how I feel, We walk around the world and we say, you made me feel this way, and you made me feel this way. This thing made me feel this way. And we actually have so much um, ability to manage those things and to work with those things and to not be a victim to our experience and our environment. And it just takes us understanding ourselves and what's really happening and what's really going on. Yeah. So I work with people one on one, somatically, using breathwork to help them really like rebuild that powerful relationship with themselves where they can really navigate through life with more ease because they know how to drive the vehicle. They know how it works.
Awesome. And folks, let's see. I have done your community breath work, which
Mm-hmm.
you do on like a sliding scale for folks. So much fun once per month. So I'll
Yeah.
definitely be putting all the links in. And I've also done one of your programs with you, I think like in 2021, pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure. And that was huge for me. That was really helpful. That like blew open my clairsentience as well in my body. It was a very impactful. So I can highly recommend Jenn. And I often do with clients. And also, I just want to point out as well, you have these really beautiful little breathwork toolkits kind of like on your website that people can download and utilize. Highly recommend those as well. I've always been a fan of Jan's work since I found her online. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't recommend working with Jenn enough. Thank you so much, Jenn, for just being here and sharing your wisdom. I feel like I've learned so much, and also I'm excited to, just kind of like talking through this and coming into more awareness about these things and my own actions. And I'm excited to really sit with this more, and also just the permission, in regards to where I've been and where my energy's been and understanding that more. I know that this is going to be really valuable for people. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you, appreciate your work. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Had a blast. Hope this is helpful.
Absolutely. And our matcha and cacao didn't get the best of us too bad.
I think it worked.
All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you found this valuable, please share it with someone you know who could benefit from it. Leave us reviews on iTunes, Spotify. Be sure to join my newsletter community for podcast updates, helpful resources, and a number of different things. Sending you so much love. And don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.